let's talk about St. George's Day. We can get on to was he actually Turkish / Palestinian / Persian?
That was a bit muted this year.
A bit muted this year.
I was a bit disappointed because I thought I'd have an opportunity to write the article that I do every couple of years.
Yeah.
Nick, out of that tendency, I had all the jokes ready to go.
Let's be honest, we're all very excited. Yeah. We're all waiting. Has Otto English done his tweet? And we all look forward to it. But Tom, you've written about Keir this week. Keir Starmer gave a little St. George's Day address in Downing Street. He had all the St. George's flag bunting. He described himself as a true Englishman.
Yep.
Or woman, I don't know.
Yeah. Where he's landed on that one.
Yeah.
But no, it was interesting, I think, primarily because of how unintentionally cringy it was. It was this sort of showcase of that kind of very irritating kind of centrist dad version of patriotism, which almost makes you long for even the more unpleasant forms of nationalism. It's so irritating to actually watch it unfurl. It talks about his patriotism is rooted in 1996, Euro 1996. That's like the year zero for like the centrist dad patriot. It's just about being supplanted now, I think, by the Olympics opening ceremony. But like it's kind of those two things is where the nation was founded.
Yeah,
effectively. He was talking about Eccles cakes. He was talking about Melton Mowbray pork pies. It was a really
all things we like. But
absolutely, Gary Lineker was in attendance. Ross Kemp was there for some reason. It was one of those things where it was like if you had to come up with a sort of satire or parody of what a clumsy Keir Starmer attempt at patriotism would look like, it would be there. Quite interesting as well. He made a point in this address of talking about the far right naturally and the need to sort of reclaim the flag from the kind of racist scumbags we saw tearing around various towns in the wake of Southport last year, which I thought was interesting because I think that says something about the way in which centre-left technocrats, whenever they feel the need to talk about patriotism, it's often kind of in the negative. It's this kind of idea that they have to kind of hesitantly start waving the flag because otherwise the idiot plebs will be drawn to racism or something like that. Like they need Keir Starmer to show them that you can be a patriot and not a racist, even though the vast majority of people already know that and probably already roughly are that.
Yeah.
So a reminder of, I think, of when particularly the Labour Party and particularly Keir Starmer talk about patriotism, it's this undertone of fear and loathing of the public that makes them feel they even have to start talking about it in the first place, even with quite risible results, as we saw.
And they're really, they're really behind the public on this in terms of like the fact that you see surveys all the time that say more than 90% of people don't think that being English is a racial issue. That anyone can be English, either they're born here or they integrate here. I don't know who they think they're trying to steal the flag from, if that makes sense. I mean, tiny minority of far-right lunatics.
Yeah,
why do they have such a big hold on the imagination?
Didn't you talk about wresting the flag from those who would wave it?
Yeah.
Who else would have it? I don't know. I think I'm not the whole St. George thing. I'm not really open. I'm not really and I think because I'm Irish, I'm not really. I don't think I can speak on it, but I do think that powerful countries that have this self-flagellating view of themselves, they're just heading for chaos, because there's nothing to defend.
Yeah.
What is England? What is England anymore? What are you defending when you defend it against far-right bigots, explain what your vision of England is.
Yeah.
Because it's certainly not one where it's a melting pot, because what we have at the moment, to quote the comedian Nate Bargatze, is a bunch of pots that want nothing to do with each other, and have no intention of integrating into the society, So again, what are you defending? What are you trying to say that the UK is? I have no idea. It's a completely incoherent position they all have.
A health service with a country attached, perhaps, might be the start, right?
Yeah,
exactly. The NHS, the England football team, Paddington. That's about as far as it goes.
Paddington's values as well, not just the bear.
No, absolutely. It's like what he stands for.
Yeah.
But it's interesting as well, because I think a lot of it, the kind of discomfort that the Labour Party in particular, but the sort of metropolitan in general, have with Englishness, with St. George's Day, whatever, the fact that even when they're trying to kind of speak to it, they do it in a very kind of dad dancing kind of fashion, it's very embarrassing, is broadly speaking also wrapped up with that kind of general kind of anti-mass sentiment. The fact that the vast majority of the British are in England are English. It kind of fuses with their general prejudice against just the majority of their own country, who they do see as backward, as bigoted, people who are voting for Brexit, who are turning towards more centre-right parties, even against their supposed economic self-interest, people who they increasingly find quite strange and exotic and don't really understand their lives. All these things kind of get wrapped together. So I think they kind of come to see discussions around St George's Day or whatever just as a conduit to a group of people that at best they've lost touch with and at worst they see with, broadly speaking, contempt. You know, it's not just a kind of cultural cringe that they experience where this issue is concerned. I think it's wrapped up with that sense of that the majority are wrong-uns, you know, which I think is part and parcel why that even kind of London-based journalists have been able to sort of indulge supposed Scottish nationalism because of the fact that it's almost like a kind of escape hatch from the horrendous English majority. You know, it's like a faux progressive way out of this terrible country that keeps electing the wrong governments or whatever. You know, I think these things are so intimately bound up. It's not just the patriotism question; it's sort of the democracy question that they have as much discomfort with.
Again, it's this kind of expansion of a tiny media elite to cover the whole country. You know, the beliefs of a tiny media elite who were sucking the oxygen from each other, you know, and don't represent the vast majority of people. The Supreme Court decision on trans was widely celebrated. The only people who didn't celebrate it are BBC journalists and Labour members. So it doesn't reflect. They don't reflect the UK. They think they are the UK, as you say, Paddington and all these things, but not J.K. Rowling. You know? So it's like I don't know. It's such a narrow. It really reminds me sometimes of the city in the Hunger Games. You remember the city in the Hunger Games where they're all dressed like Vivienne Westwood, you know, and they basically just kind of pit the commoners against each other. That's what these people remind me of. You know, a kind of elite who are so far removed from the people that they're ordering not to feel this way or that way that they might as well be on another planet. You know.